The cab pulled up to the iron gates of Riverside Manor, and my heart hammered against my ribs. 5 years. 5 long years of sleepless nights in medical residency, endless rotations, and dreaming of this exact moment. I'd pictured my mother's face 1,000 times, her proud smile, when I'd walk through those doors as Dr. Elena Rodriguez, finally able to give back everything she'd sacrificed for me. Through the window, I could see the estate sprawling across 3 acres of manicured lawn. But something felt wrong. The gardens my mother had lovingly tended, filled with roses and jasmine, were gone, replaced by geometric hedges and cold stone sculptures. The warm terracotta paint she'd chosen had been covered with stark white. Even the fountain where we'd thrown pennies and made wishes had been removed. I paid the driver and stood at the gate, my diploma clutched in trembling hands. The intercom buzzed when I pressed it. Yes? A woman's voice, clipped and unfamiliar. "I'm here to see Catherine Rodriguez." "I'm her daughter, Elena." Silence stretched for several seconds. Then the gate clicked open. A woman I'd never seen before answered the door. She was younger than my mother, maybe 40, with sharp features and expensive jewelry that glittered in the afternoon sun. Her smile was practiced, empty. "You must be the daughter." "I'm Diane. Please, come in. Where's my mother?" I stepped inside, my stomach knotting. Nothing looked familiar. The warm, artistic touches my mother had filled this house with, the paintings she'd collected, the hand-woven rugs from her travels, all gone. Everything was modern, minimal, cold. "Catherine is occupied at the moment. I'll fetch her for you." Diane's heels clicked across the marble floor as she walked toward the back of the house. I followed, my medical bag heavy on my shoulder. We passed through rooms that should have held memories but felt like a stranger's home. The kitchen where my mother had taught me to make empanadas had been gutted and remodeled into something that belonged in a design magazine. Not a family home. Diane stopped at a door near the service hallway and knocked. "Catherine, you have a visitor." The door opened and my world collapsed. My mother stood in the doorway wearing a gray housekeeping uniform. Her beautiful face, the face that had kissed my scraped knees and beamed at my high school graduation, looked exhausted, weathered beyond her 52 years. Her thick dark hair, which she'd always worn flowing and free, was pulled back in a severe bun. She held a feather duster in her hands that I remembered as soft and graceful, now rough and reddened. "Elena?" Her voice cracked. "Baby, you're home?" I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. This had to be some kind of nightmare, stress-induced hallucination from too many 30-hour shifts. "Mom," I finally whispered. "What? What are you wearing?" My mother looked down at her uniform as if seeing it for the first time, confusion crossing her face. "Oh, this? I work here now, Mia. I help around the house. It's where I belong." "Where you belong?" "Mom, this is your house." "Our house." Diane laughed, a sharp, cutting sound. "Oh, sweetie, nobody told you. This hasn't been Catherine's house for nearly 5 years. This is my home now. Your mother is very fortunate that my husband and I allow her to stay here and earn her keep." The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "Your husband? What are you talking about? Your stepfather and I have been married for 4 years. After your mother's troubles, we thought it best she stay somewhere familiar. We generously provide her with room and board in exchange for light household duties." I turned to my mother, searching her eyes for the strong, brilliant woman who'd raised me alone after my father died. The woman who'd built a successful chain of art galleries from nothing. The woman who told me I could be anything I wanted to be. "Mom, what is she talking about? What troubles?" Tears filled my mother's eyes. "I got sick, Elena, in my mind. I couldn't take care of myself anymore. Robert had to take over everything. They let me stay here. I don't deserve more than this. Mentally incompetent, Diane said with false sympathy. The doctor said she couldn't make decisions for herself. Your stepfather had to take control of everything for her own protection, of course. My hands clenched into fists. My stepfather? Robert, your mother's ex-husband. Wow, technically still her husband when we started seeing each other, but the divorce went through smoothly once the incompetency ruling came down. The room spun. 5 years ago, my mother had been healthy, successful, running 4 art galleries across the state. She'd inherited them from my grandmother and had grown the business into something remarkable. And now she stood before me in a maid's uniform, believing she deserved nothing. Where is Robert? My voice came out cold, controlled, the voice I used in the E when delivering bad news. At the office. He runs a very successful consulting firm now. Diane examined her manicured nails. You really should have called ahead, Elena. This is quite an inconvenient surprise. I looked at my mother, at the woman who'd sacrificed everything to send me to medical school, who believed in me when no one else did. She looked back at me with eyes that were both present and utterly lost thought in that moment. I made a promise. I'd spent 5 years becoming a doctor. I would spend however long it took to uncover the truth and destroy whoever had done this to my mother. Starting now. I checked into the Harborview Hotel downtown and immediately opened my laptop. My hands were steadier now, the initial shock crystallizing into cold determination. Someone had stolen my mother's life, and I needed to understand exactly how they'd done it. I started with public records. The property deed showed a transfer 5 years ago from Catherine Rodriguez to Robert and Diane Chun. Then, 2 months later, another transfer, this time to Diane Chun alone. My mother's name had been completely erased from ownership of her own home. Next, I searched for divorce records, filed 6 months after I'd left for medical school. Grounds: Catherine Rodriguez declared mentally incompetent, unable to manage her own affairs. Attached was a psychiatric evaluation signed by Dr. Marcus Brennan. I kept digging. The art galleries, Rodriguez Fine Arts, had been sold 4 years ago to a company called Meridian Holdings. More searching revealed that Meridian Holdings was owned by David Chen. Diane's brother. My phone rang. Unknown number. Elena Rodriguez? Yes. This is Robert Chun. Diane told me you stopped by today. I wish you'd called first. I closed my eyes, trying to keep my voice level. I came home to see my mother. I wanted to surprise her. I understand, but seeing Catherine like that must have been difficult. I should have prepared you. Prepared me for finding my mother living as a servant in her own home? It's more complicated than that, Elena. His voice was smooth, practiced. Your mother had a severe breakdown shortly after you left. She became paranoid, couldn't make basic decisions, forgot to eat. Dr. Brennan said she needed constant supervision. We couldn't afford full-time care, so Diane suggested Catherine could stay with us and help around the house. It gives her purpose. Her therapist recommended it. She owned 4 art galleries. How could you not afford care? The galleries were failing. Your mother couldn't manage them anymore. She was making terrible decisions, alienating clients. We had to sell before everything collapsed. David gave us a fair price. The money is being held in trust for Catherine's care. Then why is she cleaning your floors for free? She's not. We provide room and board. And she wants to help, Elena. It makes her feel useful. You have to understand, your mother isn't the woman you remember. She's diminished. Rage burned in my chest. I want to see the medical records. Silence. Then, those are private. I'm a doctor now. I can review medical documentation. If Mom is truly incompetent, show me the evidence. I don't need to show you anything. I'm her legal guardian. The courts agreed with me. If you want to be part of your mother's life, you'll accept the situation and stop causing trouble." He hung up. I sat staring at my phone. The man who'd married my mother when I was 10 years old, who taught me to ride a bike, who'd attended my 8th grade science fair, that man had just threatened me. I spent the next 3 hours researching attorneys who specialized in elder abuse and financial exploitation. One name kept appearing: Thomas Brenner. His firm had won multiple high-profile cases against family members who defrauded elderly relatives. His success rate was impressive, his reputation for tenacity even more so. I called his office first thing the next morning. "Brenner and Associates. How may I help you?" "I need to speak with Thomas Brenner. It's urgent. My mother was declared mentally incompetent under suspicious circumstances, and I believe it was done fraudulently to steal her assets. Mr. Brenner is in court this morning, but this sounds serious. Can you come to the office at 3 o'clock today?" "I'll be there." The law office occupied the top floor of a renovated warehouse overlooking the harbor. Thomas Brenner was in his mid-40s, with intelligent eyes and a firm handshake. He listened without interrupting as I told him everything my mother's successful business. The sudden incompetency diagnosis, the rapid transfer of assets, finding her working as a maid. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "The timeline is extremely suspicious. Your stepfather moved very quickly after you left for medical school. Did your mother have any history of mental illness?" "None. She was sharp, creative, successful. She ran her galleries for over 20 years. And this Dr. Brennan who signed the evaluation? I've never heard of him before yesterday." Thomas pulled up something on his computer, his expression darkening. "Dr. Marcus Brennan. Interesting. He had his medical license suspended 18 months ago for providing fraudulent psychiatric evaluations. He's currently under investigation for accepting payment to declare people mentally incompetent so family members could seize their assets." My heart raced. So this was planned. It appears so. Your stepfather meets Diane. They plan to take everything from your mother. They pay Dr. Brennan to declare her incompetent. Then they systematically transfer all her assets to themselves. He looked at me seriously. "This is elder abuse, fraud, conspiracy, and financial exploitation. If we can prove it, we can undo everything. But it won't be easy. What do we need to do? First, I need you to get your mother to see a legitimate psychiatrist for an independent evaluation. Can you do that? She thinks she deserves to be a maid. She won't leave the house willingly. Then we approach it differently. Tell her you're worried about her physical health. Say you want her to have a complete checkup. Once we get her in front of a real doctor, we can assess her mental state properly. What else? I'll file a motion for access to all financial records from the past 5 years, the gallery sale, property transfers, bank statements, everything. I'll also depose Dr. Brennan and your stepfather. We'll need testimony from people who knew your mother before all this happened. Friends, business associates, gallery employees. Anyone who can speak to her mental competency. How long will this take? Months, possibly longer. These cases are complex, and they'll fight us every step of the way. But Elena," he leaned forward, "if what you're telling me is true, we can get justice for your mother. We can get her life back." Tears burned behind my eyes. "She doesn't even think she deserves a life anymore. Then we'll help her remember who she is. But I need to warn you, this will get ugly. Robert and Diane will fight back hard. They'll try to discredit you, intimidate you, possibly threaten you. Are you prepared for that?" I thought of my mother in that gray uniform, her hands raw from cleaning chemicals, living in a servant's quarters in her own home. I'm prepared. Good. Let's get started. That evening, I returned to Riverside Manor. Robert answered the door this time. He looked older than I remembered, grayer, wearier. He also looked guilty. "Elena, what are you doing here?" "I came to see Mom. May I come in?" He hesitated, then stepped aside. My mother was in the kitchen preparing dinner, still wearing her uniform. When she saw me, her entire face lit up with a joy that broke my heart. "Elena, did you eat? I made chicken mole, your favorite." "Mom, I need to talk to you. Can we go somewhere private? I can take a break." "Let me ask Mrs. Chun. You don't need permission to talk to your own daughter." My voice was sharper than I intended. Robert appeared in the doorway. "Catherine, finish dinner first. Elena can wait in the living room." "No," I said firmly. "Mom, come with me. Now." My mother looked between us, confusion and fear crossing her face. Finally, she untied her apron and followed me to what used to be her art studio, now converted into some kind of home gym. "Mom, I need you to listen carefully. I don't believe you're sick. I'm a doctor now, remember? Let me take you to see a specialist. A real one. Someone who can give you a proper evaluation. But I've seen doctors, Mia. They all said the same thing. One doctor said that. A doctor who lost his license for lying to people. Please, Mom, do this for me. Let me take care of you the way you took care of me." She touched my face, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You really think something's wrong with what they told me? I think someone lied to you. I think someone wanted to take everything from you, and they used a fake diagnosis to do it. Please trust me, Mom." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Okay, Elena, I'll see your doctor. But if they say the same thing, you have to promise me you'll stop this. You'll let me stay here where I'm safe. Deal. But Mom, when the doctor tells you the truth, you have to believe them. Can you promise me that?" "I promise." As I left that night, I saw Diane watching from an upstairs window. Her expression cold and calculating. Good. She should be worried. Because I wasn't the scared teenager who'd left for medical school 5 years ago. I was Dr. Elena Rodriguez, and I was coming for everything they'd stolen. Dr. Rachel Morrison specialized in geriatric psychiatry and had worked with Thomas on several elder abuse cases. She agreed to evaluate my mother under the guise of a routine health screening. I picked my mother up early the following morning. Diane stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her expression hostile. "Where are you taking her?" "To a doctor's appointment. She has a doctor. She has a fraud who lost his license. Now she has a real one." My mother climbed into my car, glancing nervously back at the house. "What if Mrs. Chun gets angry?" "Stop calling her that," I said gently. "Her name is Diane, and she has no right to be angry about you seeing a doctor." Dr. Morrison's office was warm and welcoming, filled with plants and soft lighting. She spent nearly 3 hours with my mother conducting cognitive tests, reviewing her history, asking detailed questions about her daily life. I waited outside, pacing the hallway, checking my watch every few minutes. When they finally emerged, my mother looked exhausted but less anxious than before. "Elena, please join us," Dr. Morrison said in her office. The doctor pulled up her evaluation notes on her computer. "Mrs. Rodriguez, I'm going to be very direct with you. There is absolutely nothing wrong with your mental capacity. You show no signs of dementia, psychosis, depression severe enough to impair function, or any condition that would prevent you from caring for yourself or making decisions." My mother stared at her, speechless. But Dr. Brennan said I was incompetent. He said I had degenerative. Dr. Brennan was wrong. Or more accurately, he was paid to lie. Dr. Morrison's voice was gentle but firm. "You've been over-medicated with antipsychotics and sedatives that you don't need. These medications have been making you confused, compliant, and foggy. But you're not mentally ill, Mrs. Rodriguez." But I signed papers. I agreed to everything. You were drugged and manipulated. What happened to you wasn't your fault. Dr. Morrison leaned forward, her expression serious. Mrs. Rodriguez, based on my evaluation and the circumstances you've described, I believe you're a victim of financial elder abuse. People you trusted took advantage of you and systematically stole your assets. My mother's hands began to shake. The galleries. My mother worked so hard to build those galleries. She made me promise to protect them, to grow them, to pass them to Elena someday. We're going to get them back, Mom, I said, squeezing her hand. All of it. Dr. Morrison provided detailed documentation of her findings. Thomas filed an emergency motion that same afternoon, requesting the court invalidate my mother's incompetency ruling and freeze all assets until a full investigation could be completed. While we waited for the hearing, I started investigating exactly what had been stolen. Rodriguez Fine Arts had been my grandmother's legacy. She'd started with one small gallery in the Arts District 40 years ago and built it into a chain of 4 galleries across the state, each specializing in different art forms: contemporary, classical, sculpture, and photography. When she died, she left everything to my mother, who'd run the business successfully for 2 decades. I found old financial records in a storage unit my mother had rented before everything fell apart. The galleries were thriving, bringing in steady revenue, acquiring valuable collections, hosting successful exhibitions. The combined business value was conservatively estimated at $9 million. Then I found the sale documents. Meridian Holdings had purchased Rodriguez Fine Arts for $1.8 million, less than 20% of its actual value. I called Thomas immediately. They didn't just steal it, they sold it to Diane's brother for a fraction of what it was worth. Classic fraud scheme, Thomas said, and I could hear the anger in his voice. Declare your mother incompetent so she can't object. Sell her business to a family member for pennies on the dollar. Split the money among themselves. Can we get the galleries back? If the sale was fraudulent, yes, we can void it. David Chun would have to return the galleries or pay their current market value, which, given the art market appreciation over 4 years, could be $12 million or more. Good. I want him to pay. There's something else. Elena, I've been examining your stepfather's finances. He and Diane are living well beyond what his consulting firm brings in. They're spending money like it's infinite. Where's the money from the gallery sale? That's what I'm trying to determine. $1.8 million should be deposited somewhere, but I can only trace about $400,000 in their accounts, and most of that's already spent. Where did the rest go? I don't know yet, but I will. The emergency hearing was scheduled for the following week. Thomas warned me that Judge Harrison might not rule in our favor immediately, but at least we could start the legal process. I spent that time learning everything about my grandmother's galleries. I visited each location, introduced myself to the staff, and discovered that David had fired most of the longtime employees and replaced them with people who had no knowledge of or passion for art. One evening, I met with Mrs. Vivian Foster, who'd been my grandmother's gallery manager and had worked for my mother until the sale. Your mother loved those galleries like they were her children, Mrs. Foster said, tears in her eyes. Every artist we represented, every exhibition we mounted, she poured her heart into it. When David Chun bought them, he came in and said we were all outdated. He fired everyone who remembered your grandmother's vision. Did my mother seem sick before the sale? Sick? No, but she seemed scared. She kept saying Robert was worried about her, that doctors were concerned. She started missing meetings, forgetting appointments, but now I wonder if she was being drugged. Did you ever see Diane before the sale? Oh, yes. She started coming around about a year before everything happened. She was Robert's assistant at first, but then she began acting like she owned the place. She'd make comments about how your mother was too artistic, how the galleries needed a business mindset. We all knew something was wrong. Will you testify for us? Tell the court what you saw? Anything for your mother. She deserves justice. I gathered testimonies from 8 former employees, all saying the same thing. My mother was competent, creative, and successful until Robert and Diane convinced her she was sick. The night before the hearing, my mother called me, her voice shaking. Elena, Robert came to my room tonight. He said, if I testify against him, he'll make sure I end up on the street. He said I'll have nothing, no one. My hands clenched into fists. Mom, he's lying. He's terrified because he knows we're going to win. What if we don't? What if the judge doesn't believe us? Then we appeal, and we keep fighting until someone listens. But Mom, we're not going to lose. I'm so tired, Mia. Part of me just wants to accept this life and stop fighting. You taught me never to accept injustice. You worked so hard to give me opportunities. Now let me fight for you, please. She was quiet for a moment. Your grandmother would be so proud of you. She'd be proud of both of us, Mom. We're going to get her galleries back. I promise. The next morning, we walked into the courthouse together. My mother wore clothes I'd bought her, not that gray uniform. She stood taller, stronger. Diane and Robert were already there with their attorney, a slick man named Harrison Wolf. When Diane saw us, her lip curled. This is a waste of everyone's time, she said loudly. Catherine is clearly unwell. Look at her dragging her daughter into her delusions. My mother's hand tightened on mine. I squeezed back. Let them talk, I whispered. The judge will see the truth. As we entered the courtroom, I felt the weight of what we were about to do. This wasn't just about money or property. This was about my mother's dignity, her identity, her future, and I wouldn't stop fighting until she had all of it back. Judge Patricia Harrison had a reputation for being thorough and fair. She'd presided over dozens of elder abuse cases and had little patience for financial exploitation. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. We sat at one table. Robert, Diane, and their attorney Harrison Wolf at another. My mother's hands trembled in her lap. Judge Harrison reviewed the emergency motion. Mr. Brenner, you're requesting that this court invalidate a mental incompetency ruling from 5 years ago. Freeze all assets currently held by Mr. and Mrs. Chun, and grant temporary guardianship of Catherine Rodriguez to her daughter. That's substantial. Yes, Your Honor. We have compelling evidence that the original incompetency ruling was fraudulent, obtained through a corrupt physician who has since lost his medical license. We also have evidence of systematic financial exploitation. Mr. Wolf? Your Honor, this is a vindictive action by a daughter who abandoned her mother for 5 years. Mrs. Rodriguez was properly evaluated and found unable to manage her affairs. My clients have been caring for her out of compassion. Judge Harrison looked at my mother. Mrs. Rodriguez, do you understand why you're here? My mother stood slowly. Yes, Your Honor. My daughter believes I was lied to about being sick. She thinks people stole my mother's business from me. What do you think? My mother paused, looking at me, then at Robert. I think I've been very confused for a long time, but I'm starting to remember things. I remember being smart enough to run 4 galleries. I remember making my own decisions. And I don't understand how I went from that person to cleaning toilets. When did you last see a psychiatrist? This week. Dr. Rachel Morrison. She said there's nothing wrong with me except being given medicine I didn't need. Judge Harrison made notes. I'm ordering an independent psychiatric evaluation. Until that's complete, I'm granting temporary guardianship to Elena Rodriguez and freezing all assets associated with Rodriguez Fine Arts or the sale thereof. No one is to transfer, sell, or hide any assets related to this case. We'll reconvene in 3 weeks. Wolf jumped up. Your Honor, that's highly irregular. I'm protecting a potentially vulnerable person until we establish facts. If your clients have done nothing wrong, they have nothing to worry about. Court dismissed. Outside the courthouse, Diane was furious. You just cost us 3 weeks of business. She hissed at me. I'll be happy when you're in prison. I replied calmly. Robert tried to approach my mother. Catherine, please. You know I only wanted to protect you. Don't talk to my mother. I stepped between them. All communication goes through our attorney. That afternoon, I moved my mother into a hotel suite near mine. She looked around the elegant room as if seeing daylight for the first time in years. I can stay here? Yes, Mom. This is yours. You don't need anyone's permission. She sat on the bed and began crying not tears of sadness, but of relief. Over the next days, I watched my mother slowly return to herself. The medications Dr. Brennan had prescribed cleared from her system. She started sleeping better, eating more, talking more. She began remembering things she'd forgotten. I remember signing papers, she told me one evening. Robert said they were to protect me. I was so foggy from the pills. I just signed where he pointed. It's not your fault, Mom. I was weak. You were drugged and manipulated. That's not weakness. That's abuse. Thomas had been busy. He'd subpoenaed 5 years of financial records, deposed Dr. Brennan, and tracked down everyone who'd worked with my mother before the incompetency ruling. Brennan cracked immediately. Thomas told me over coffee. He admitted Robert paid him $60,000 to diagnose your mother as incompetent. He's willing to testify in exchange for immunity. What about David? Diane's brother? He's claiming he bought the galleries in good faith, had no knowledge of fraud. But I found something interesting. He paid $1.8 million, but the money didn't go to your mother or Robert. It went to a company called Silver Point Investments. What's Silver Point Investments? An LLC owned by Diane, created 2 weeks before the gallery sale. The money went straight to her personal accounts. She's been using it to fund her lifestyle designer clothes, luxury vacations, jewelry. She spent almost all of it. So she planned this from the beginning. As we walked through, my mother's fingers trailed along the walls. This room used to showcase emerging sculptors. We discovered so many talented artists here. And there, she pointed to a corner. That's where your grandmother hung the first painting she ever sold. What happened to all the original art? I don't know. David probably sold it to the highest bidder without caring about the artist's stories or their significance. An older man emerged from the back office, stopping short when he saw my mother. Catherine? James? My mother's face lit up. You're still here? Barely. David kept me on to handle acquisitions, but he glanced at the desk clerk, lowering his voice. It's not the same. He doesn't care about art, just profit margins. James worked with my grandmother, my mother explained to me. He has an incredible eye for emerging talent. Had, James corrected sadly. David doesn't want my opinion. He wants safe, commercial pieces that sell quickly. My mother looked around the gallery with such sadness that it broke my heart. This had been her life's work, her mother's legacy, and they'd gutted it. We're going to get it back, I told her. Even if we do, look what they've done to it. How do we recover from this? James spoke up. Catherine, if you get the galleries back, I know at least 15 people who'd come back to work for you. Everyone David fired. We all miss what this place used to be. Hope flickered in my mother's eyes. Really? The moment we heard you were fighting back, we started talking. Mrs. Foster, Marcus, Chan, not David, the other Chan who managed the photography gallery, everyone. We want to help rebuild what you created. I don't know if I can, James. It's been 5 years. What if I've forgotten how? You haven't forgotten. You're still Catherine Rodriguez. You still have your mother's vision and your own talent. You just need your confidence back. We left the gallery with my mother, looking thoughtful rather than defeated. That evening, she asked if we could visit the other 3 galleries. We spent the next day driving to each location: the Contemporary Gallery in Midtown, the Classical Gallery near the university, the Photography Gallery in the Harbor District. At each one, we found former employees who'd been fired by David. At each one, people told my mother they believed in her and wanted to help. By the end of the day, my mother had a list of 23 people ready to return the moment she regained control. I thought everyone had forgotten me, she said as we drove back to the hotel. Nobody forgot you, Mom. They were just waiting for you to come back. The trial began the next morning. The courtroom was packed with reporters and spectators. Judge Harrison had already warned she wouldn't tolerate disruptions. Thomas stood to give his opening statement. Your Honor, this case is about betrayal. Catherine Rodriguez built a life, raised a daughter, and ran a successful business for 20 years. She trusted her husband, Robert Chun, to support her. Instead, he conspired with his mistress, now his wife, Diane Chun, to systematically destroy Catherine's life and steal everything she owned. He presented the timeline: the affair, the fraudulent incompetency evaluation, the rushed divorce, the transfer of assets, the sale of the galleries to David for far below market value. The evidence will show that every step was calculated to exploit a vulnerable woman. Catherine Rodriguez was drugged, isolated, and convinced she was mentally ill when she was perfectly healthy. She spent 5 years working as a maid in her own home while the defendants lived lavishly on her stolen inheritance. Wolf stood for his opening. Your Honor, this is about a daughter who abandoned her mentally ill mother for 5 years and now wants someone to blame. Catherine Rodriguez was properly diagnosed and properly cared for. My clients have been saints, providing Catherine with a home when she had nothing. Judge Harrison made notes. Mr. Brenner, call your first witness. The plaintiff calls Dr. Rachel Morrison. Dr. Morrison methodically destroyed Dr. Brennan's diagnosis. Explaining the tests she'd performed and her conclusion, Mrs. Rodriguez shows no signs of mental incompetence. She was overmedicated with drugs that caused confusion and passivity. In my expert opinion, she was never mentally ill. On cross-examination, Wolf tried to suggest my mother's condition might have improved over 5 years, but Dr. Morrison shut it down. Conditions like Dr. Brennan described don't spontaneously improve. They progress. If Mrs. Rodriguez was truly incompetent 5 years ago, she'd be worse now, not better. Next came Dr. Helen Park, the court-appointed evaluator, who confirmed everything Dr. Morrison had said. Then Thomas called Dr. Marcus Brennan himself. Brennan looked terrible. His license gone, facing potential criminal charges. He'd agreed to testify truthfully in exchange for immunity. Dr. Brennan, did you perform a thorough evaluation of Catherine Rodriguez 5 years ago? No. Why did you sign a document declaring her mentally incompetent? Brennan's voice was barely audible. Robert Chun paid me $75,000. Gasps filled the courtroom. Did you ever actually examine Mrs. Rodriguez properly? I met with her once for about 20 minutes. Robert had already given her sedatives. She was drowsy. I asked a few questions, then signed the paperwork Robert had prepared. Were you aware your diagnosis would be used to take away Mrs. Rodriguez's rights and transfer her assets? Yes, that was the point. The most powerful moment came when my mother took the stand. She spoke clearly about the confusion, the medications, the papers Robert convinced her to sign, the day she realized she no longer owned her own home. When did you realize you'd been deceived? Thomas asked. My mother looked at me. When my daughter came home and asked questions nobody else had asked. She looked at me and saw someone who didn't belong in a maid's uniform. Everyone else had accepted it, but Elena knew something was wrong. What do you want this court to understand? That this can happen to anyone. I was successful, educated, and they still destroyed me. If it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone who trusts the wrong people. When Diane took the stand, she tried to paint herself as a helper, but Thomas demolished her with financial records, photos of luxury purchases, expensive vacations, designer clothes, all paid for with my mother's money while my mother scrubbed floors. You spent nearly $2 million in 4 years on what? Living expenses. An $80,000 necklace is a living expense? Diane had no answer. The evidence was overwhelming. By the end of the week, the pattern was clear. Robert and Diane had systematically isolated, drugged, and robbed my mother. But the real turning point came when Robert, terrified of prison, broke ranks and testified against Diane, admitting the entire conspiracy. The payments to Dr. Brennan, the plan to steal the galleries. As he spoke, my mother watched him with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not anger. Something closer to pity. This man had destroyed her life, and now he was destroying himself, trying to save his own skin. Justice was coming. I could feel it. The jury deliberated for 3 days. During that time, my mother and I existed in a strange limbo, unable to fully relax, but also unable to do anything but wait. On the morning of the 3rd day, we received word. The jury had reached a verdict. The courtroom was even more packed than during the trial. My mother's hand was steady in mine as we waited for the jury to file in. All rise. Judge Harrison took her seat. As the jury reached a verdict, "We have, Your Honor." The forewoman stood, holding a piece of paper. My heart pounded so hard I could barely hear. In the matter of Catherine Rodriguez versus Robert Chun and Diane Chun, on the count of fraud, we find the defendants guilty. Relief crashed over me. But the forewoman wasn't finished. On the count of elder abuse, guilty. On the count of conspiracy, guilty. On the count of financial exploitation, guilty. Guilty on every count. Diane's face went white. Robert dropped his head into his hands. Judge Harrison banged her gavel as murmurs spread through the courtroom. Order. I'll hear victim impact statements before sentencing. My mother stood, her voice clear and strong. For 5 years, I believed I was worthless. I believed I deserved nothing more than to clean floors and live in a servant's room. They didn't just steal my money or my business. They stole my identity. They convinced me I was broken when I was whole. They made me forget who I was. She looked directly at Robert. I loved you. I trusted you. And you used that love to destroy me. But I want you to know something. You failed. Because my daughter never stopped believing in me, even when I stopped believing in myself. And together, we proved that you can steal someone's possessions, but you can't steal their worth. There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. Judge Harrison's ruling was swift and severe. The incompetency declaration was voided retroactively. The divorce was invalidated. All property transfers were reversed. The gallery sale was declared void. David had to return the galleries or pay their current market value, which was assessed at $13 million. Robert and Diane were ordered to pay $5 million in compensatory damages and $3 million in punitive damages. And Judge Harrison referred the case to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. What was done to you, Mrs. Rodriguez, was not just civil fraud, it was criminal. These defendants deserve prison time. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Mrs. Rodriguez, how do you feel? My mother stopped, looking at the cameras with quiet dignity. I spent 5 years believing I deserved nothing. Today, a jury told me what I should have known all along. I deserved everything. I deserved respect, honesty, and love. I didn't get those things from the people who should have given them to me. But I'm going to make sure other people in my situation get the help they need. What does that mean? It means I'm creating a foundation to help victims of elder abuse. No one should go through what I went through alone. As we drove away, my mother looked lighter than I'd seen her in years. I thought I'd feel angrier, she said. But I just feel free. The anger might come later. Maybe. But right now, I just want to move forward. Over the next weeks, legal machinery moved quickly. Robert and Diane were ordered to vacate Riverside Manor within 30 days. All bank accounts were transferred back to my mother's name. David couldn't pay $30 million, so the galleries would be returned within 60 days. That my mother began making plans. She hired Mrs. Foster as her new operations director. She reached out to all the former employees, offering them their positions back with raises. She met with architects about restoring the galleries to their original warmth and character. And slowly, day by day, she became herself again. Not the broken woman in a uniform, but the strong, creative, successful woman she'd always been. One evening, we sat in her hotel suite, looking at old photos of the galleries. You know what I realized during the trial? My mother said, all those years, I thought they'd taken everything from me. My home, my business, my dignity. But they couldn't take the one thing that mattered most. What's that? She smiled, touching my face gently. The love between a mother and daughter. They tried to isolate us to make me believe you'd abandoned me. But the moment you came home, you fought for me. That's something they could never steal. Tears filled my eyes. I should have come home sooner. You came home exactly when you were meant to. You came home with the skills and knowledge to save me. If you'd come home earlier, you wouldn't have been Dr. Elena Rodriguez. And I needed you to be a doctor to see through their lies. I was so angry when I found you in that uniform. That anger saved me. Use it wisely, Mia. The criminal trial was set for 2 months later. In the meantime, my mother reclaimed her life piece by piece. She sold Riverside Manor, too many painful memories. She bought a beautiful loft in the Arts District with huge windows and exposed brick, decorating it with pieces from the gallery she loved. She invited her old friends over the ones Robert had pushed away and rebuilt those. Relationships. She threw herself into planning the restoration of the galleries, and she started designing the foundation that would help other victims of elder abuse. I'm calling it the Rosa Rodriguez Foundation, she told me. After my mother, she'd want her legacy to be about helping people. The first gallery reopened 3 months after the verdict. My mother had worked tirelessly with architects and designers to restore its original character, warm lighting, intimate spaces, carefully curated exhibitions. At the opening ceremony, over 200 people came. Former employees, artists, collectors, friends, everyone who'd believed in my mother and waited for her to come back. James, the acquisitions director, gave a speech. Catherine Rodriguez didn't just own galleries. She created homes for art and artists. She believed in people when no one else did. She gave chances to emerging artists who went on to become renowned. That's the legacy we're celebrating tonight, not just beautiful spaces, but beautiful vision. My mother stood to speak, and I saw my grandmother in her, the same strength, the same grace, the same unshakable belief that art could change lives. 5 years ago, someone tried to erase me. They almost succeeded, but my daughter refused to let them. She came home and asked one simple question. Why is my mother wearing a maid's uniform? That question changed everything. She looked at me, tears in her eyes. Elena showed me I wasn't broken, I was stolen from. She gave me courage to fight back. She reminded me who I am. These galleries are more than buildings. They represent refusing to accept someone else's story about who you should be. The crowd applauded. But my mother held up her hand. I'm also announcing the creation of the Rosa Rodriguez Foundation for Elder Abuse Prevention. We'll provide legal help, counseling, and education to people who've been victimized the way I was. Because no one should have to fight alone. As the evening wound down, Mrs. Foster approached me. "Your mother is remarkable. In 3 months, she's done what most people couldn't do in 3 years. She's making up for lost time. No, she's showing everyone who doubted her exactly who Catherine Rodriguez really is. The criminal." Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Judge Harrison looked grave as she addressed Robert and Diane. "You orchestrated a cruel scheme to destroy another person for financial gain. You showed no remorse and no recognition of the harm you caused." She sentenced Diane to 12 years in prison, followed by 5 years probation. Robert, because of his cooperation, received a reduced sentence, 7 years in prison, 5 years probation. Both were permanently barred from contacting my mother. As they were led away, Robert looked back at my mother one last time. She met his gaze but said nothing. He was a stranger now, someone she used to know. Outside the courthouse, my mother spoke to reporters one final time. "I feel like I can breathe again. For 5 years, I lived in fear and confusion. Now I'm free. Not just legally free, but emotionally free. What will you do now?" "I'm going to run my galleries, help other victims through my foundation, and spend time with my daughter. I'm going to live the life that was stolen from me." "Do you forgive Robert?" My mother thought carefully. "I don't know if I'll ever forgive him. But I don't need to forgive him to move forward. His actions don't define me anymore. I define me." As we drove away from the courthouse, my mother looked at me. "Thank you, Elena, for everything. For believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself." "Always, Mom, always." Justice had been served. But more importantly, my mother had been restored, not to who she was before, but to someone even stronger. Someone who survived. Someone who refused to stay a victim. Someone who turned pain into purpose. Someone who proved that no matter how thoroughly someone tries to erase you, you can write yourself back into existence. 6 months after the sentencing, my mother's foundation officially launched. The office occupied a beautiful space in the restored flagship gallery, a full circle that felt right. "We've already helped 19 families," my mother told me one morning, her eyes bright with purpose. People being financially abused by family members, caregivers, even their own attorneys. We connected them with lawyers, helped them get independent evaluations, walked them through the process. How many have won their cases? 16 so far. 3 are still in litigation. But every single one told me they felt hopeless until they found us. I'd completed my residency and joined a geriatric medicine practice, specializing in identifying signs of elder abuse. The experience with my mother had opened my eyes to how often doctors missed the warning signs. One afternoon, a nurse told me I had a new patient, a 78-year-old woman brought in by her grandson, who insisted she needed to be declared incompetent. The pattern was immediately familiar. Mrs. Dorothy Walsh was alert, oriented, and sharp. Her grandson hovered nervously, trying to answer questions for her. "Mrs. Walsh, may I speak with you privately?" "That's not necessary," the grandson said quickly. "Actually, it's required. Standard procedure." Once alone, Mrs. Walsh relaxed. "Doctor, I don't think I should have signed those papers last week. But my grandson said if I didn't, I'd lose my house." I ran cognitive tests. Mrs. Walsh's results were completely normal. I called my mother's foundation. By the end of the day, Mrs. Walsh had an attorney reviewing the papers, power of attorney documents that would have given her grandson control of everything. We'd caught it just in time. "Thank you," Mrs. Walsh cried. "I thought I was going crazy." He kept saying I was confused, that I didn't remember things correctly. "You're not crazy. Someone was trying to take advantage of you. But you're going to be okay now." Cases like this reminded me why our fight had mattered. My mother's story wasn't unique. It happened every day to people who trusted the wrong person. My mother had started seeing someone, a kind gallery owner named Marcus Chen, no relation to the other Chuns, thankfully, who'd reached out after the trial to collaborate on an exhibition. He treated her with genuine respect and affection, never rushing her, always listening. He's different, my mother told me over dinner one evening. He asks what I think, what I want. He doesn't try to make decisions for me. That's how it should be. After Robert, I'd forgotten what healthy looked like. She seemed genuinely happy, not just content, but joyful in a way I hadn't seen since childhood. The galleries were thriving under my mother's restored leadership. She brought back the personal touch, the warmth that made them special. Each location had its own character, but shared that essential quality. They felt like home for art. We're booked for exhibitions through next year, Mrs. Foster told me proudly. Not because we're the biggest or fanciest, but because artists want to work with us. Catherine has that gift. She makes people feel seen. One afternoon, I received an unexpected call from Thomas. Elena, I have someone who wants to speak with you. It's single quotes S. complicated. Who? Robert. He's serving his sentence, but he's asked for a meeting with you and your mother. He says he has something important to tell you. My stomach tightened. Mom doesn't want to see him. I know. But he claims there's money hidden that he wants to tell you about. Money that rightfully belongs to your mother. I told my mother that evening. Her reaction surprised me. I'll see him, but only if you're there with me. Mom, you don't have to do this. I know, but if there's money he stole that we haven't recovered, I want it. Not for me, for the foundation. To help more people. We met Robert at the prison 2 weeks later. He looked older, grayer, diminished. Prison had stripped away whatever charm he'd once possessed. Catherine, Elena, thank you for coming. My mother said nothing, her face unreadable. I wanted to tell you there's money I hid. $400,000 in an account in the Cayman Islands. Diane doesn't know about it. I want you to have it, Catherine. For what I did to you. Why tell us now? I asked. Because I have nothing left to lose. And because I've had a lot of time to think about what I did. He looked at my mother. I destroyed the best thing in my life. I destroyed you. For money and for Diane, who I realize now never cared about me at all. You want forgiveness, my mother said quietly. I don't deserve it. I know that. But I wanted you to know I'm sorry. Truly sorry. My mother was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice steady. Robert, you stole 5 years of my life. You convinced me I was worthless. You made me believe I deserved to scrub floors and live in shame. An apology doesn't undo that. I know. But I want you to understand something. I'm not the same woman you destroyed. I'm stronger now. I've built something meaningful from the ashes of what you took. I help people who were victimized the way I was. I've reclaimed my galleries, my identity, my life. She leaned forward. You wanted to erase me. Instead, you revealed who I really am, someone who doesn't break, even when everything seems broken. You're a remarkable woman, Catherine. You always were. I was just too blind and too greedy to see it. I don't forgive you, my mother said. Maybe someday I will, but not today. However, I don't hate you either. Hate would give you power over me, and I'm done giving you any power at all. She stood. We'll take the account information. That money will help people you could have helped if you'd been a better man. As we left, Robert called out, Catherine? I hope someday you can be happy again. My mother turned back. I already am. In the car, she was quiet for a long time. Are you okay? I asked. I'm better than okay. I realized something in there. What? I don't need his forgiveness or his apology. I don't need anything from him at all. I don't need anything from it all. I'm complete without him. That's real freedom. The $400,000 was recovered and transferred to the foundation. My mother used it to expand services, hiring more staff and partnering with organizations in 3 more states. The second gallery reopened, then the third, then the fourth. Each opening was a celebration, not just of beautiful spaces, but of resilience and renewal. At the fourth gallery's opening, an elderly woman approached my mother. "Mrs. Rodriguez?" "I'm Martha Brennan, Marcus Brennan's mother." My mother stiffened slightly. "I wanted to tell you how sorry I am for what my son did to you. I didn't raise him to be that kind of man. I'm ashamed of him." My mother's expression softened. "Mrs. Brennan, you're not responsible for your son's choices." "I know, but I wanted you to know that I think you're remarkable. What you're doing with your foundation, helping people who were victimized the way you were, that's real grace. Thank you." "My son is dying," Mrs. Brennan said quietly. "Cancer. He has maybe 6 months. He wanted me to tell you he's sorry for what he did." My mother was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that surprised me. "Tell him I hope he finds peace." After Mrs. Brennan left, I asked my mother, "Do you mean that?" "Yes. He was a broken man who did terrible things. But he's dying now, and I won't add to his suffering. That doesn't mean I forgive him, but it means I won't carry hate for him either. You're more gracious than I could be." "I'm not being gracious for him, Mia. I'm being free for me." A year after the trial, my mother's foundation hosted its first annual gala, a real charity event with real purpose. Over 300 people attended. We raised $200,000 in one night, money that would help dozens of families escape financial abuse. In her speech, my mother said something that brought the room to silence. "Forgiveness is complicated. Some people think it means excusing what was done to you or pretending it didn't hurt. But I've learned that real forgiveness isn't about the person who hurt you. It's about freeing yourself from the prison of pain they created." She looked out at the crowd. "I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive the people who tried to destroy me, but I've forgiven myself for trusting them. I've forgiven myself for the years I lost. And most importantly, I've reclaimed the right to define my own story." The applause was thunderous. Later, as the event wound down, my mother and I stood looking at a portrait of my grandmother that hung in the gallery lobby. "She'd be so proud of you," I said. "She'd be proud of us both." We honored her legacy, not just by reclaiming the galleries, but by using what happened to help others. Do you ever wish things had been different? Every day. But I'm learning to accept what was while building what will be. That's the real work of healing. Marcus appeared with 2 glasses of wine. To the Rodriguez women, past, present, and future. To resilience, my mother added. To justice, I said. We clinked glasses, and I saw in my mother's eyes something I'd been hoping to see for months. Peace. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of purpose. Not forgetting what happened, but refusing to let it define her future. Not erasing the past, but writing a new story over it. That was redemption. Not in forgiving those who didn't deserve it, but in reclaiming the life they'd tried to steal. 2 years after I'd come home to find my mother in a maid's uniform, I stood in the flagship gallery at the opening of an exhibition titled Resilience, Art from Survival. The exhibition featured work by artists who'd overcome significant adversity, domestic violence, homelessness, illness, injustice. My mother had curated it personally, spending months finding artists whose stories deserved to be told. This is more than an art show, she told the crowd that had gathered. This is a testament to the human spirit's refusal to be broken. The centerpiece was a painting my mother had commissioned from a formerly homeless artist, a phoenix rising from ashes. But instead of flames, the ashes were made of broken contracts, legal documents, and chains. Art has always been my language, my mother continued. When I couldn't speak my truth, when I couldn't defend myself, When I believed the lies I'd been told, Art was still there, waiting for me to remember who I was. I watched her from the crowd, barely recognizing the confident, radiant woman on stage as the broken person I'd found 2 years ago. The Rosa Rodriguez Foundation had helped 47 families by now. 47 people who'd been victims of financial elder abuse, who'd found hope through my mother's work. Mrs. Walsh, the woman I'd helped in my practice, was there. She'd become a volunteer for the foundation, using her experience to help others. "Your mother saved my life," she told me. "Not just my money or my house, she saved my sense of self-worth." The foundation had expanded beyond legal help. My mother had created support groups, educational workshops, and a hotline staffed by counselors trained in elder abuse. "I realize people need more than lawyers," she'd explained. "They need to know they're not alone. They need to rebuild their confidence. They need community." She'd also started teaching guest lectures at the medical school about recognizing elder abuse, workshops for financial advisors about ethical responsibilities, seminars for families about protecting vulnerable loved ones. If my story can prevent even one person from going through what I went through, then it was worth it, she told me. I'd made my own changes. In addition to my medical practice, I'd started consulting with the district attorney's office on elder abuse cases, using my medical expertise to identify fraud. Together, my mother and I had created something meaningful from something terrible. The galleries were thriving, not just financially, but artistically. My mother had returned to her roots, championing emerging artists, hosting community events, creating spaces where art and people could flourish. Marcus had become a permanent fixture in my mother's life. They'd moved in together 6 months ago, taking things slowly, building trust carefully. "I never thought I'd trust anyone again," my mother admitted to me. "But Marcus is patient. He understands that trust is earned, not given." "Are you happy, Mom?" "I'm more than happy. I'm whole." At the exhibition, a young woman approached my mother. She was maybe 30, with nervous eyes and trembling hands. "Mrs. Rodriguez, my name is Jennifer. I saw your interview on television about elder abuse. I think my father is doing something similar to my grandmother." My mother took her hand gently. "Tell me what's happening." As Jennifer explained the sudden incompetency diagnosis, the transfer of assets, the isolation, I saw my mother's expression shift from sympathy to determination. "Jennifer, you're doing the right thing by speaking up. Here's what we're going to do. ... Watching my mother guide this young woman, seeing her transform pain into purpose, I understood something profound. They'd tried to erase her. They'd almost succeeded. But in failing to destroy her, they'd accidentally created something more powerful than what she'd been before. She wasn't just Catherine Rodriguez, successful gallery owner. She was Catherine Rodriguez, survivor, advocate, and beacon of hope for others. Later that evening, after the exhibition closed, my mother and I walked through the quiet gallery together. "Do you remember what you asked me 2 years ago?" she said. "You asked what I wanted to do first after we won the case. You said you wanted to visit the galleries. I did. But what I really wanted, what I didn't know how to say then, was that I wanted to remember who I was. The woman I'd been before they convinced me I was worthless." "And did you remember?" She smiled. "I did better than remember. I became someone new, someone who carries the strength of who I was with the wisdom of what I survived." We stopped in front of my grandmother's portrait. "Grandma would be proud," I said. "She would. But more than that, I'm proud. I'm proud of the woman I've become, the work we're doing, the lives we're changing." "What's the most important thing you've learned through all of this?" My mother thought for a long moment. "That your worth doesn't come from what you own or what you do. It comes from who you are. They took my possessions, my business, even my home. But they couldn't take my worth, because that was never theirs to take. She turned to face me, and I learned that asking for help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. I couldn't save myself alone. I needed you, Thomas, Dr. Morrison, all the people who believed in me. There's no shame in that. What would you say to someone going through what you went through? I'd say, you're not crazy. You're not worthless. You're not broken. Someone is lying to you, and you deserve better. Fight back. Ask questions. Trust your instincts. And know that you're not alone. There are people who will help if you let them. We walked toward the exit, turning off lights as we went. Mom, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you ever wish you could go back and change things? Stop it all from happening? She considered this carefully. Sometimes. But then I think about the 47 families we've helped. I think about the changes we've made in how elder abuse is recognized and prosecuted. I think about the awareness we've raised. And I realize that if I could go back and prevent it all, those things wouldn't exist. So you're glad it happened? No, I'm not glad. What happened to me was wrong, cruel, and unjust. But I'm glad about who I became because of it. I'm glad about the purpose I found. I'm glad I can help others. She put her arm around my shoulders. Pain can either destroy you or refine you. It took me a long time to choose refinement. But I did choose it, and that choice made all the difference. As we stepped out into the night, I looked back at the gallery, warm lights glowing, art visible through the windows. My grandmother's legacy restored and reimagined. You know what the real victory is? I said, what? They wanted to make you disappear. Instead, you became impossible to ignore. My mother laughed a real, joyful sound. Yes, I suppose I did. We walked to our cars together, and before we parted, my mother hugged me tightly. Thank you, Elena, for coming home. For asking questions. For fighting when I couldn't. For reminding me who I was. Thank you for being worth fighting for. For being strong enough to survive. For turning suffering into service. We make a good team, don't we? The best. As I drove home that night, I thought about everything that had happened. The shock of finding my mother in that uniform. The rage at discovering the betrayal. The fear that we might lose in court. The triumph of victory. The long road of healing. And I understood the real moral of our story. You cannot steal someone's worth. You can steal their possessions, their time, even their belief in themselves, but their inherent value remains unchanged, waiting to be reclaimed. And when someone finds the courage to reclaim it, to stand up, speak out, and fight back, they become more powerful than they ever were before. Because survival isn't just about enduring. It's about transforming pain into purpose, trauma into testimony, and victimhood into victory. That my mother had been erased. Broken, convinced she was worthless. But she rose from those ashes and built something beautiful. She proved that you can always rewrite your story, that your past doesn't define your future. That asking for help is brave, not weak. That justice is worth fighting for, no matter how long it takes, and most importantly, that no one, absolutely no one, can tell you your worth except you. The E&D moral lesson. Your value as a person is not determined by what others say about you, what they take from you, or how they treat you. True worth comes from within and cannot be stolen, only temporarily forgotten. When you find the courage to reclaim your identity and fight for justice, you not only restore your own life, but create the possibility of helping others do the same. Trust your instincts, ask questions, demand respect, and never accept someone else's false narrative about who you are. And remember, the most powerful thing you can do after surviving injustice is use your experience to prevent others from suffering the same fate. With the financial records, Brennan's testimony, and witness statements? Absolutely. The independent psychiatric evaluation confirmed what Dr. Morrison had said. My mother had no mental illness and never had. Dr. Helen Park, the court-appointed evaluator, was even more direct. Mrs. Rodriguez was the victim of medical fraud and systematic psychological abuse designed to make her believe she was incompetent. This is one of the clearest cases of exploitation I've seen in 30 years of practice. Armed with this evidence, Thomas filed a comprehensive lawsuit: fraud, theft, elder abuse, conspiracy, and emotional distress. He also notified the district attorney's office about potential criminal charges. Meanwhile, I focused on helping my mother prepare for what was coming. They're going to say terrible things about you in court, I warned her, but I did run the gallery successfully for 20 years. I know, Mom, and we have people ready to testify to that. But you need to be prepared. She was quiet for a moment. Elena, I need to tell you something. When Robert first started seeing Diane, I knew. I saw messages. I confronted him, and he said it was nothing. I believed him because I wanted to. People have affairs, Mom. That doesn't justify this. I should have left him immediately. Instead, I tried to save my marriage. And while I was trying, he was planning to destroy me. That's not your fault. He used your love as a weapon. 2 weeks later, someone broke into my hotel room. Nothing was taken. The papers were scattered. My laptop left open. A warning. Then a letter arrived. No return address. Typed message. Drop the case or face consequences. We need to report this to the police, Thomas said. Will it help? It creates a record. And it shows they're desperate. Innocent people don't threaten witnesses. But I wasn't afraid. I was angry. And I was going to use that anger to take back everything they'd stolen. The trial date was set for 6 weeks away. 6 weeks to prepare for the battle that would determine my mother's future. And I was going to make sure we were ready. 3 weeks before trial, Diane hosted a charity event at Riverside Manor. The invitation arrived at my hotel, forwarded from my old address. You're cordially invited to the 5th Annual Arts Foundation Gala, hosted by Diane and Robert Chun. Thomas called immediately. Tell me you're not thinking of going. I'm absolutely going. Elena, that's exactly what she wants. You said they're living beyond their means. A charity gala is the perfect place to see exactly how. They're spending my mother's money. This is a bad idea. I'm bringing Mom too. That's an even worse idea. They humiliated her for 5 years. She deserves to walk into that house as a guest, not a servant. The night of the gala, I bought my mother a beautiful dress, deep emerald green that made her eyes shine. I had her hair professionally styled. When she looked in the mirror, tears filled her eyes. I look like myself again, she whispered. You look like the woman you've always been. We arrived with Thomas. The house was transformed, decorated with flowers, filled with guests in expensive clothes. Servers carried champagne. A string quartet played in the corner. Diane saw us immediately. She wore diamonds that probably cost more than most people earned in a year. Well, Catherine and Elena decided to grace us with their presence. Her smile was venomous. Catherine, you look so different out of uniform. Almost like a real person. Careful, Thomas said quietly. I'm recording everything. Record away. This is my home. Robert appeared, looking uncomfortable. He wouldn't meet my mother's eyes. Diane, maybe we should. Should what? Be nice to the woman trying to steal our livelihood? Family? I kept my voice level. You destroyed my mother and stole everything she owned. I saved it. Your mother was running those galleries into the ground. That's a lie, my mother said, her voice stronger than I'd heard in weeks. I ran that business successfully for 20 years. You think you did. But you were already sick, Catherine. You just didn't know it yet. David appeared, a tall man with Diane's same cold features. "Is there a problem?" "No problem," Diane said sweetly. "Just family catching up." I watched carefully throughout the evening. Diane introduced donors, talking about the foundation's work, helping struggling artists. She didn't mention the money came from stealing my mother's inheritance. Several guests recognized my mother, looking at her with confusion and sympathy. "Isn't that Catherine Rodriguez?" I thought she was sick. "She looks fine to me." During dinner, Diane stood to give a speech. "Thank you all for coming tonight. The Arts Foundation has been my passion project. I know something about families in crisis. My husband's first wife struggled with mental illness, and we've been caring for her ever since." My mother's hand tightened on mine under the table. "That's why tonight's cause is so important. We're raising money for families dealing with mental health crises to ensure no one faces these challenges alone." The irony was staggering. She was using my mother's stolen money to throw a party about compassion. When the speech ended, I stood. "I'd like to say something." Diane's smile froze. "This isn't really appropriate. It's perfect timing. Since you're raising money for mental health awareness, let me share a story." I looked around the room. 5 years ago, a woman was declared mentally incompetent by a doctor who was paid to lie. Her husband used that diagnosis to divorce her, steal all her assets, and force her to work as a maid in her own home. Murmurs spread through the room. That woman is my mother, Catherine Rodriguez. The person who did this is standing right there. I pointed at Diane. "The galleries you're admiring, they were built by my grandmother and successfully managed by my mother for 2 decades, until they were stolen through fraud and sold to Diane's brother for a fraction of their value." "That's defamatory," Wolf appeared from somewhere. "You'll be sued for slander." "Truth is a defense against slander, Mr. Wolf. Everything I just said can be proven in court." David stepped forward. "I purchased those galleries legally, from a woman declared incompetent through fraud. That makes the sale void." Diane found her voice. "Get out. Get out of my house." My mother stood, and there was power in her voice I hadn't heard in years. "Your house? This is my house. You're a thief who's been playing dress-up in my life. But the game is over. You're a pathetic, broken woman who should be grateful I let you stay here at all." "Thank you for that," Thomas said, phone still recording. "The judge will love it." Guests were leaving some quickly, others stopping to hug my mother. "I knew something was wrong," Mrs. Foster said. "I'm so sorry I didn't fight harder for you, Catherine." As we left, I heard Diane screaming at Robert. "This is your fault. You said she wouldn't come back." In the car, my mother was shaking, not with fear, but with righteous anger. She used my money to throw a party about compassion while wearing diamonds bought with my inheritance. "That recording will help our case," Thomas said. She basically admitted to everything. The next day, 3 major donors withdrew from the Arts Foundation. 2 board members resigned. Local news picked up the story. Local woman accuses socialite of elder abuse and fraud. Diane tried to control the narrative, giving interviews claiming my mother was confused. But public opinion was turning. Robert called 20 times. I finally answered. "Elena, please. We need to talk. We'll talk in court. You don't understand." "Diane. She's not who I thought she was. She convinced me Catherine was sick. You paid Dr. Brennan. You transferred the assets. You isolated Mom from her friends. Don't pretend you're a victim. If I testify against Diane, will you and Catherine forgive me? That's not how this works. You can't betray someone for 5 years and expect forgiveness because you got caught. She's threatening me. She says if I turn on her, she'll destroy me. You don't have anything left to lose. It was never yours to begin with." I hung up. "He's trying to make a deal," I told Thomas. "Let him. His testimony would be valuable, but we have enough without him." The trial date approached. Our case was solid. The evidence overwhelming, but I knew people like Diane didn't go down easily. This battle was just beginning. The day before trial, my mother asked if we could visit the galleries, her galleries. I drove her to the flagship location in the Arts District, the one my grandmother had opened 40 years ago. It looked different. The warm, welcoming exterior my grandmother had designed, terracotta walls. Wrought iron accents had been painted over with cold gray. The window displays that used to showcase local artists now featured generic abstract prints. "Can we go inside?" My mother asked quietly. "It's your gallery, Mom, of course." The interior was worse. The intimate exhibition spaces had been opened up into one large, sterile room. Track lighting had replaced the carefully chosen fixtures. The cozy reading nook where visitors could browse art books was gone. A young woman at the desk looked up. "Can I help you?" "I'm Catherine Rodriguez. I used to own this gallery." The woman's eyes widened. "Oh, Mr. Chun isn't here right now." "That's fine. I just wanted to look around."